So good afternoon. My name is Kelly Boyce-Heimbaugh. I'm proudly serving as the president of the Chautauqua Women's Club. Thank you. Welcome to our Contemporary Issues Forum lecture. We invite you to join us here every Saturday at 2 p.m. through week 8. Next week's speaker is foreign policy expert, author, and novelist, Dr. Sean McFate. The title of his talk is Sneaky War: Russia, China, and the U.S. and the Emerging Strategic Paradigm. I hope you can make it. So my remarks are going to go a little longer this afternoon. They're important, so I hope you bear with me. For 133 years, the Chautauqua Women's Club has provided innovative programming, dynamic events, leadership opportunities for women, and life-changing scholarships for students. Our leadership and legacy is one of significant influence both on the grounds of the Chautauqua community and outside on society. To date, we proudly have provided almost $1.8 million to the Chautauqua Institution in scholarships for students in the School of Performing and Visual Arts. Our influence can also be seen on society through leadership of the women's suffrage movement, the League of Nations, the Equal Rights Amendment, as well as safe working conditions for employees. Our legacy includes such greats as Eleanor Roosevelt, Amelia Earhart, and Sandra Day O'Connor, just to name a few. If you are a member of the Chautauqua Women's Club, we thank you and encourage you to get involved. Volunteering is always the easiest way to make new friends. If you are not yet a member, please consider joining. We have a membership table right over there with our new tablecloth. Please consider joining, and you can also go to the website, chautauquawomensclub.org, or come down to our lovely house by the lake next to the Athenaeum. We are a welcoming community to all, and that is why we are known as the heartbeat of Chautauqua. So thank you for your support. Today, I'm very honored to introduce President Anne Rondeau. She will talk for approximately 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes or so of Q&A. After her talk, please queue up to one of the two microphones, and please only one question per person to allow others the chance to ask a question and refrain from asking follow-up questions if possible. At 5 p.m. today at the Women's Club, we are hosting a wine and cheese meet and greet reception for President Rondeau. The cost is $25 per person, which supports all that we do in the Women's Club. We invite veterans at no charge, and all are welcome. Space is limited. Today's lecture is sponsored by the bequest of Eleanor Sarah McKnight Hupt. Ellie passed away at the age of 88 on December 16, 2020. She was born in Pittsburgh on June 14, 1932, to Colonel William Kenneth and Emily Selstrom McKnight, and grew up just down the road in Jamestown, New York. In 1972, Ellie married Edward Hupt, a descendant of the Revolutionary War soldier Philip Hupt. Ellie summered in Chautauqua her whole life and was very active in the community. And of course, she was a life member of the Women's Club. Upon receiving news of Ellie's generous bequest, I called Ellie's niece, Heather Davidson. I asked her to tell me something special about her aunt. First and foremost, she replied, she was a patriot. Supporting women's leadership is part of our mission. So in Ellie's honor, we proudly introduce one of the highest ranking females in the military and president of the Naval Postgraduate School. We are very grateful to you, Ellie. I think that deserves a hand. Well, I wish I could say that President Rondeau's trip to Chautauqua was an easy one. It took her 3 connections to get to Buffalo. Thank you for accepting the invitation before you looked at your travel itinerary. Yesterday, her trek from Chautauqua from Monterey, California, started at 3:30 a.m. and for a flight that started at 5 a.m., but it was canceled. Almost 24 hours later, you finally arrived in Chautauqua in the middle of the night. Every text I received from you was positive and inspiring. I couldn't believe it. When I first received word of your flight cancellation, I gasped, but your assistant assured me, when President Rondeau commits, she will always follow through on that commitment. So thank you for being you. In 2019, retired Vice Admiral Rondeau was appointed as president of the Naval Postgraduate School. She brings to the assignment an unparalleled record of leadership and achievement within the military and academia in the areas of education, training, research, executive development, change management, and strategic planning. Prior to her appointment, Admiral Rondeau served as the 6th president of the College of DuPage. Her most recent military position was as the president of the National Defense University, a consortium of 5 colleges and 9 research centers in Washington, D.C. Sometimes, when I am writing an introduction, I take the liberty of shortening a speaker's bio. Not today. I want to share President Rondeau's extraordinary leadership with you. In 1985, she was selected and served as White House Fellow in the Reagan administration and went on to serve as the following: Deputy Commander of the U.S. Transportation Command in Illinois, Pentagon Director, Chief of Staff of the U.S. Navy Staff, Commander of the Naval Personnel Development Command in Virginia, Commander of the Naval Service Training Command at Great Lakes, Illinois, Pacific Fleet Chief of Staff in Hawaii. Let me repeat that. Pacific Fleet Staff, Chief of Staff in Hawaii, Commanding Officer of Naval Support Activity in Tennessee, and other staff and commanding responsibilities with policy planning, fleet support, joint logistics, training, and education. She retired from the U.S. Navy as a 3-star admiral in 2012 and was the 2nd woman to have achieved that rank in the Navy. She then served as partner and later an independent consultant at IBM Watson Group. President Rondeau will discuss how the Naval Postgraduate School's unique mission contributes to technological leadership and protection of the seas, which is the foundation of economic growth and security for the U.S., as well as our allies, partners throughout the world. So with further ado, on behalf of the Chautauqua Women's Club, to President Rondeau and all the veterans here today, thank you for your service.
I'm standing on a podium here. It's great. Very nice to have everybody here, and including those out in the lawn. Nice to see you. Wave that you hear me. Great. Okay. Thank you so much for being here today, and I just appreciate it. And I've got so many things I want to share with you. But when Kelly said that I have 45 minutes, you never tell an admiral she's got 45 minutes to do anything. So I'm going to be conservative of my time the best way that I can be, and yet meet what I think are my obligations here, as well as to also answer your questions. I do want to give a shout out about Sean McFay. If you have not heard him, come and see him. He paid me for this announcement. Sean used to work with me at NDU, and so I know Sean, and I'm here because of Sean McFay, and I want to thank his mother for all that. So thanks to Sean, it was great. So I want to, let's first of all talk about gratitude. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be here with all of you. I have a history, though, with Chautauqua that was virtual for a long time. When I was a sophomore at Eisenhower College in Seneca Falls, New York, small school back then, and it was a great school. Unfortunately, it began as a school during the downsizing of private liberal arts schools, kind of like what's happening today. So it no longer is in existence, but it was then. And the academic dean was named Dr. Warren Hickman. And Warren Hickman was a mentor, a coach, and a great guy, and just a great leader. And there's nothing about Warren Hickman that I did not admire, honor, and just he was one of the exemplars for my intellectual development. And so he always came to Chautauqua, and he was here many, many, many years. And when I was in the military, he kept on inviting me to come, but I was in Hawaii, Japan, whatever, and I couldn't come. So I am having my past come back to me. Dr. Hickman, I'm back. And so it's great. I want to thank also Michael Hill, and to acknowledge his leadership here as president, the fact that he was so important to so many non-profits. I actually had the benefit when he redid the arena stage in DC. I was a seasoned subscriber. I watched that thing go up, and I just really am admiring to him about what he did. Kelly, thank you. Thank you for making this happen, and I'm really grateful to you. And I'm actually also grateful to Deborah Treffs. When you interview with a journalist, you're never quite sure how you're going to turn out. And she did a nice job on the article, and I thank her. So for all those people, I thank, but I also want to thank the Chautauqua Women's Club, and for all of you being here. And I love the idea that there's going to be a Chautauqua dialogue. I think that's really important, and the Women's Club here is important. Chautauqua Institution is important, and I just want to thank you for what you are doing and talk about some things that might be useful. But I need to know something here. I see a couple of baseball caps from USS Midway and Top Gun, a few others. How many of you here are veterans of some sort? Veterans of some sort. Yeah, the guy, see, I knew the guy way in back was a veteran. Okay, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate knowing that. How many are related to veterans? You see, that's even a better number, so that's great. So thank you very much for all that. So I will tell you that when Warren Hickman told me about Chautauqua, I did not know about it. And so I learned about it over time. So then time goes on, Warren invites me to come, I can't come. And then I moved to Monterey, California 3 years ago in 2019. And the amazing impact of the Chautauqua movement, think about that. In the 19th century, from about 1870s, right after the Civil War, when the country was really in turmoil and a lot was going on, from about that time frame to about the 1920s, there was a huge school movement going on in America. And Chautauqua was part of that movement. And that movement was actually due to a lot of different things going on. But there was a commitment by Chautauqua to the intellectual, cultural, spiritual growth of the country at a time when the Industrial Revolution was taking place. We had post-Civil War. Ulysses S. Grant, oh, by the way, saw this, and for the freemen and for rural America, he had begun the Land Grant Institution project. And so you had a lot of things going on when Chautauqua, the movement, was going on. Well, one of those things is that when, not long after John Vincent and Lewis Miller had started the camp here in 1874, the movement had all these other places. So I am in California, I'm in Monterey, it is 2022, I'm about ready to do some things to come here, and I find out there is a Chautauqua on the Sea in Pacific Grove, California. Imagine my surprise. Come out and see us. It's a great place. So it is in Pacific Grove, and it was built in 1881, and it is still there. The hall became known as, again, it became known as Chautauqua by the Sea, began as a Christian movement, and Pacific Grove was a gated Methodist community. And so this is where it began. The building was restored in 1988 and again in 2005. And it is there as an historical landmark. Come out to Monterey, come out to see us at Naval Postgraduate School, and come out to Chautauqua by the Sea. So what you are and what you have become for the nation is a place that honors, celebrates, and activates and executes learning. So what we have at Monterey is an interesting place called Naval Postgraduate School. And also we have the Defense Language Institute, as well as the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. We have Cal State Monterey Bay. We have, of course, right up the road, Stanford and all of the UC systems. It's a very good place to think about the heritage of Chautauqua for religion, art, culture, and science. So I am, by perturbation, by intellectual bent, and by just kind of my love for reading, an historian. But my job as the president of Naval Postgraduate School is essentially to be a futurist. So we talk about what is happening here this week, and you can't make this up. What is the week 4 theme? The future of history and the future of being. Now, I am in a business that talks about the future constantly because of the kinds of people who we educate and the kinds of work that we do. But it is also about the future based upon what we know from our past experience. And so although I could say in kind of my own way that Naval Postgraduate School is our own Navy and Marine Corps and military Chautauqua by the Sea, I would tell you is that we are just in an extraordinary place. We educate principally military officers from all the services, as well as federal employees from Homeland Security, from Commerce, from Treasury. And we also have a substantial international presence. And our job is to teach science and math and emerging technologies that are in front of us, that are before us, to these, what I call warrior scholar students. They are students who come from the profession of national security and go and do things. So they start and they come from someplace, they go to someplace, they're not hanging out at the coffee shops for 5 years. And they are truly doing extraordinary things. So we are looking at how does what happened ahead of us seem today, and how do we anticipate that? So although we are a naval command and we do belong to the Department of Defense, we are a pedigreed, a fully credited in the California and regional systems and the national systems by engineering and other creditors, excuse me. And we are an institution that educates for the future the military and national security professionals in all the kinds of things that we talk about. And essentially, it's about leadership, and about leadership in a technological world. So if I take this, we all have one, right? If I take this, in my generation, a number of things happened. We went through 5 different propulsion systems in the Navy. And I'm old enough to say, yes, that did include steam, but not sail. But we went from steam to gas, electric, nuclear, and now a hybrid of both. Now we are looking at green energy. In my time, 5 different propulsion systems. That says every single time you do that, you're going to change the way you train. You're going to change the way you bring in people, how you nurture them, grow them, and they're all going to work together in this diverse environment where you have all kinds of technology and engineering going on, and at the ultimate point, at the point of combat. So this is important because it requires us not only give out and earned by merit degrees and short courses and certificates. It's about really understanding what leadership is in this world, what technological leadership is. So my mission is to provide defense-focused graduate education, including classified studies and interdisciplinary research to advance the operational effectiveness, technological leadership, and warfighting advantage of the Naval Service. What does that mean? I got to have smart people making good decisions all the time. And they've got to do it in a pace that I call the physics of decision-making, where mass and speed, mass is heavier, speed, it's denser, speed is faster, at a pace that is phenomenal. That the human brain is almost unable to outpace the computers, but the human spirit and soul and ability to make good judgments never outpaces the computer. So how do you do that? And how do you understand that? And we are working to understand the decision-making phenomenon in that space. So we need to understand questions. We need to ask questions and be curious. So what we're not only doing is earning those degrees, but trying to instill in our people the ability to ask questions, discern, on-the-spot design, and on-the-spot understand analytically what's in front of them. So let's take, for instance, the Russo-Ukraine war. We see the tanks. What we don't see is the extraordinary cyber that's going on. And cyber and what's really phenomenal is that when the Russians invaded Ukraine, there were 17-year-olds in London and Paris and in New York and in California who were helping the Ukrainians that they didn't even know it because they had hacked into the Russian systems on their own. They weren't military. We didn't even know who they were at times. But they're doing this. Now that says, oh, well, aren't they great? Hooray. What would happen if that were the other side? And we had people hacking into ships at sea, to submarines under the water, to nuclear weapons. So what's good is also bad. And so we need to be able to educate differently. And this is an interesting piece of equipment. So the average iPhone you have in your hand famously has more computer power than Apollo in its moon missions. Now, you take that and you take really smart people who know how to invert the ones and zeros, and this is an extraordinary instrument for intellectual and operational impact. But how do you understand it? How do you know that? And then this has also, though, ironically, made decision makers more tactical than strategic. And so how we understand that is part of my mission in the period of strategic competition. What do I mean by that? This is not about the Cold War. This is not about Russia and China being the old Cold War competitors. This is about Russia with a sense of intent that was not as present because we had different ways to control it with governance and processes that are not being exercised today. We have a China that is truly a peer competitor in many ways. Thousands of ships at sea, thousands of satellites in space, thousands of unmanned systems under the sea. This is a scientifically, technologically sophisticated competitor. What is different about them and us, we were thinking about them and democracies, is their method and their approach of control and of what they see about the use of technology. So let's go back a little bit. I'm going to digress here a little bit. How about leaders in that environment? What do you do about that? I think it's really important for Chautauqua and the women's group here, and for Chautauqua overall to know and really lead that this is about an all-of-nation effort about learning in our environment. So 1974 was when I came into the Navy. It was at the end of Vietnam. The draft had ended. The nation was pretty torn up about Vietnam. We don't need to go over all of that. But I came in 1974, and 1973, I had graduated from college. I was good in college. I did a lot of good things, but I could not get a job. It was a Nixon recession. I could not get a job. So my parents said, hey, why don't you come on home, just kind of get yourself settled. So I went home. I thought, I live south of Poughkeepsie, New York. Vassar College, cool. I am going to go to Vassar College, to the area there, and see about joining the American Association of University Women and network. I went there, and they refused to talk to me about being a member because I had not gone to one of the right schools. There were about 33 schools, and I've talked to AAU, UW audiences, so they know I say this, but they have changed so much, so I give them a great deal of credit for seeing themselves, but I had not gone to one of 33 schools, and so therefore, they were not going to talk to me. In that same month, I went up to a Navy recruiter. I took the test, did really, really well on the test. But so the recruiter wanted to talk to me about things, and I said, why should I join the Navy? And she said, because from the day that you get your commission, you will be expected to lead. If you want to lead, come in. So that was my invitation to leadership, acknowledgement as an adult. Today, there are kids who at 12 years old and 15 years old see themselves as leaders in ways that are pretty phenomenal. And we need to think about what it is that we are nurturing for those young people, because it is a very diverse, talented, and truly skilled set of young folks who are ready to serve. But I got the opportunity to serve, the privilege to serve, and then to also lead. But so that brought me into what you saw in the biography and all that kind of thing. But what it also said to me was my important requirement, because Title IX happened in 1972 when I was just a senior in college, so I had not been able to do sports. And I'm doing this for a reason. I have been defined by my entire career by what I'm not. And that made me show up because I was always kind of the exception. And what that got me to understand, because then combat exclusion was changed in 1994. So things changed in the middle of my time. And what that brought home to me was I've got to learn. And I became that individual learner, also looking at what the corporation, what the Navy, what the service, what the nation needed from me. So when I come to NPS, I'm not a scientist or a technologist, I'm an historian. But I understand the history of science and technology and of the Navy and of the nation. And so we now do, at NPS, we're doing some extraordinary things, thinking about that future again, right? Space-based systems. Space Force is now using us as one of their educational resources. And out of the military has come things like the global positioning system that's in your cars. It's in this. The military medicine, they're always kind of going to that next edge. Aviation, submarines, it's always going to the next edge and needing to understand what the ones and zeros of computers and cyber and machine learning. And in the end, all that is good, but how you make decisions is ultimately it. So we thought that Russia and China, after the end of the Cold War in 1989, was going to be a good partnership. There was a focus on business development and on really cooperating. But when James Woolsey, the CIA director when he was at his Senate hearings for confirmation in 1993, was asked, how would he characterize a Cold War? He said this: the United States had slain the dragon, but now and would be for a long time faced by a jungle full of poisonous snakes. Now, it's not conspiratorial. It is about the fact that we were always the target for competition. And so about competition for business, competition for prosperity, and competition, frankly, for war. And so our democratic aspirations and all the things that we thought were going to happen right after the Cold War did but did not. And a group that did not believe in all that was Al-Qaeda. And then we move things forward. China is overtaking us in so many ways, but they are a worthy competitor in terms of their ability to do things. And then we had COVID. What does COVID do? The disassociation in the country was extraordinary. And I think that, frankly, post-COVID, we all have a role to play in national security. Because in the decades following 9/11, we were pretty fixated. And our competitors took full advantage of that environment. And we learned that the Soviet Union had different aims to look backwards, Al-Qaeda to look backwards, and China to look forwards. And we have both those things happening on either side of us, and it became disorienting in many ways for where we put our resources. But what are we doing at NPS and the military? We're constantly looking forward, trying to understand what is in front of us. And so what are we learning? Well, we all know, again, I don't need to go over the Chinese and Russian issues, but what we must learn is very important, and how we learn is very important. So I will tell you is that when Nelson Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world, I agree, but at some point you gotta know what that means. Today, people are learning in the past, in that time when Chautauqua began, access to education and knowledge, access to education and information was really a problem. Today, it's not. Everybody has access to information, but how do you understand it? So what I say to young people when I talk to them is that if you become a CEO, you become a mayor, you become a teacher, you become a cop, no matter what it might be, you will be expected to have exquisitely perfect information in front of you and be able to make the perfect decision at that moment. Decision-making is huge, and that is the democratic difference, is that we truly believe in the individual's capacity to make those choices, to learn constantly, and to then make the choices that then are in front of all of them. So again, we talk a lot. I've got a lot here about China and all of the competition. I'm less interested in relaying that today. I'll be happy to answer questions. But I am focused on the fact that we need to maintain our spirit of optimism and to believe in ourselves. Belief precedes action. And if we believe the worst of ourselves, our actions will then go in that direction. If we believe that there's always change in America, there's always change. There's constant dynamic change. It's not about holding back the forces of change. It's about how to manipulate, leverage, optimize, benefit, and advantage that change to prosperity and the goodness of our society. And that's what we are trying to do not only at NPS, but frankly, this is something that the military works hard at doing. And to be very frank, if you have somebody who's alongside you and he or she's in combat, and life is at its moment, you frankly are fighting the best way you can with your buddy to win. But it's also the fact that all of us take an oath and obligation to the nation. And so you're not only about winning in combat, you're about winning for the nation. And if we believe as a nation that we have a goodness about us, all the issues that do come up, then we will then be able to fight and win in many ways. Because first, we must become what we seek to lead. We need to lead what we wish to become. And so for this crowd that is closer to my age than to my niece's age, okay, this can be absolutely daunting. I'm tired of all this, and just let me do what I am doing. And I get that. But in my case, I was called to where I am. Providence put me to where I am now because there's a purpose there for me, not only as a military officer, but as a citizen of the country who believes in this nation. And so I frankly think that all of us contribute in some way. You being here is your own contribution. But what do we do when we go back out? What do I do when I go back out and I have been touched by Chautauqua? How do I take that touch of Chautauqua with me to a place like Pacific Grove in California? And so after I retired from the Navy, I joined the Watson Group at IBM. Great group, really, really smart people. But I watched IBM. So back in about 1990 or so, they almost went broke, and then they restructured. And I was part of that new kind of IBM. And it was interesting to me to watch them make those changes. And business does this. And I would tell you is that business is really important to our future. And I am going to challenge, and I've been doing this, and I'm going to be down in DC this coming week. I'm going to talk about this some more. But we need to change our way in the military of looking at technology and evolving it from a defense industrial based, a defense industrial network that brings in higher education, that brings in business and industry, the best of industry, and brings in the military. And that our military civil innovation leadership has to be different than what it has been in the past. Currently, our laws tell us what we should not do, cannot do, will not do with business and industry and higher ed. We need laws that say what we will do, should do, and must do. And that's a different way of looking at laws as to how we do this. So it's about the response to the time. And during the nuclear era and the Cold War, you kind of wanted to have some boundaries. In this era of the cognitive age, when the cognition is an asset, an investment, and frankly, in some cases, in my world, a weapon all of its own. It's that intellectual edge that we can have to be able to do these things. We've got to change from our monastic designed education system to more towards the individual and what he or she has as talents. So in the end, we're a maritime nation. I can talk about that with answering some questions. We are a nation that is working to do some things differently, but we're not quite sure. We're a military that absolutely is focused on that future. And I can answer again some questions. But here is what I would also need to talk about in all this. I am here in the women's club here. The military has become a very diverse place. And when women are extraordinary in what they're doing. Women are flying jet planes. There are 4-star generals and admirals. There are astronauts who are military women. There are military women who are going down in submarines and in the nuclear force. There are women who are now flying Blue Angels and Thunderbirds aircraft. There are women who are combatant commanders. There are women who are doing things, whether or not they are enlisted or officer. The Navy's women, the women in the military are doing extraordinary things. And that gets back to my notion that we have an obligation to recognize the gifts of this country. As an all-volunteer force, The strength of our military actually does reflect the strength of our nation. We strive to be a meritocracy. We love sports. We want people to, we like them because sports are merit-based for the most part, unless you're a Brewers fan. What we need is courage and the sense that we belong and that we matter. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories that relate to my notion that the learning of this nation needs to come together in a more civil dialogue that understands each other's differences and then comes to common solutions. We need to be a nation of liberty, of curiosity, of spirit, and of heart. So I was at Great Lakes, and one of my jobs was that I oversaw recruit training for the entire Navy. Men, women, they all came to Great Lakes, north of Chicago in Illinois. It's a cold day. It was December, I don't know, the first weekend in December. We had just graduated a class. It was a cold day, and I'm walking outdoors, and I have this really nice-looking young lady, probably about 18 years old, coming up and saying, Admiral, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? Let's go inside. So she comes inside, and she's standing at attention. Said, relax. So what's the question? She said, am I ready to fight and win? My response was, we've trained you to do what you'll be expected to do for performance and proficiency. I cannot judge your character or your heart. And she looked at me square in the eye and said, I will fight with my brain and my spirit and my heart, and I will win. She was 18 years old. She was 18 years old. And I see that all the time. We have a nation full of young folks who just want to matter. They want to have a purpose. Some will serve in military, some won't. But if we all think of ourselves, if we believe who we are, then we can become what we want to be. In the military, there's a lot about identity and belonging, and that's all really important for us. But in the end, it's really the cloth of the nation that we all wear. Whether or not the uniforms or their cool-looking T-shirts or whatever it might be, the cloth of the nation is on our back. And for all of us here, we have something really cool. We have some seasoned experience to help people be more efficient and effective in what they learn and how they learn. But our major job is to be encouragers. Remember that young lady. The core word of courage is cor, C-O-U-R, and that is the core word for heart in Latin. So honor, courage, commitment are the Navy core values. And I always put courage at the top. Without the heart for courage, without the heart, it's harder to be honorable, and it's harder to be committed. We have a heart of a nation. And my commitment at Naval Postgraduate School is to help us to understand the technological edge that really is out there. And it is extraordinary. It is daunting. It's overwhelming. It is exhausting. But the catalytic advantage we have is people who are willing to put their lives out there and who are very willing to be smarter about the decisions they make and to the advantage of the nation. That is what Chautauqua was all about. It is my privilege and my pleasure to be here today. Thank you. Okay, some questions. I always get scared when the guy who's wearing the Top Gun hat comes up first. I noticed.
Since you're a student of history,
Yeah.
given Russia's history over the centuries,
Yeah.
if you were advising the president today how to deal with the situation over there, what would you advise, and how do you see it ultimately playing out?
So great question. So what I think, it starts at a couple of places. One is the individual. So I do believe that leaders matter. So what's really interesting about the Russo-Ukraine war is it would not be the intensity in which we're in if it were not for Vladimir Zelensky. So what Zelensky showed was his ability to lead in an uneven fight. And Putin was thrown off by that presumption. So I think that leaders do matter. I think that Vladimir Putin has proven of himself to be a man for whom the risk calculus is not clear. And as you know, being a warfighter, measuring intention of the enemy is clear. And I think that we're on call to be measuring this every day. I think we have some unpredictable circumstances. You add into that the axis of Iran and North Korea. There are some issues in front of us that are really serious. I think that it's important to understand that the leader matters in this case. But I think that we have a higher risk and higher unpredictability than we ever did in the Cold War. And there's lots of signs and there's lots of stuff about this. What's interesting is the Russians are showing that they're just not as technologically advanced as we thought, at least in the operations of the military across the board. They're making some strange, so they fight, they're just bombing kind of almost indiscriminately. And I say that because what they're after is national will that will then give them access to natural resources, but they're after will. It will be very interesting to see if they go after countries that he has implied. He has implied Lithuania, he has implied Finland. And it will be interesting to see if that's a scare tactic or not, but we don't really entirely know. So the unpredictability and the risk factor on intent is much higher. So we got to watch it pretty closely. And thank you for your service in Top Gun. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for your words of wisdom.
Wait, I'm going to go to the right side. Okay.
Thank you. And inspiration, we appreciate it very much. And we understand why you're such a leader in your entire life. I have two quick questions. Number one, it's been firmly reported about the Chinese Navy is larger in numbers than the U.S. Navy, but it only really represents 25% of the U.S. tonnage. Mm-hmm. Should we be concerned about numbers versus tonnage? We saw what the British did to the Spanish Armada, which was so mighty. That's one question. Second question is, should we be worried about the hypersonic missiles that both China and Russia have developed, and we're in development of those, as far as the integrity and the safety of our Navy? Thank you very much.
So let's go to the second one first. Yes, be worried about hypersonics. It's wild. It's a wild, wild west out there in some ways. And hypersonics, we are now into hypersonics. It's kind of a new science for us. There's a lot of industry doing some great work, American industry doing some great work. Hypersonics is really an issue. There's a lot in it with quantum and hypersonics. Then you add to that the AI stuff, and you've gone into an extraordinary. It's not even a geometric curve. You're going into just an extraordinary advance very quickly. Right. So hypersonics is an issue. The first one was
advantage of tonnage over numbers.
So that is really so. We will never, as a nation, build ships at that number. We just won't do that. So you're saying, well, if it's mass against mass, you got a problem. If you have mass against disruption, you have a different problem. So if you're going to go mass to mass, we're not going to get there ever. But if you go, and they talk a lot about swarms. I mean, that's in the open literature about swarms. So they're looking at swarming and at mass. There's ways to now counter that with new technology and to think about that in different ways with cyber and hypersonics and those kind of things. So there's new science out there that leads to emerging technologies that could disrupt mass, is what I would say to you. We're not going to match it ship for ship. We're not going to do it. That's not the plan. That's not our national capability. We won't do that. As far as tonnage, Yeah, I think that that's true. It depends upon how you count American commercial tonnage and military tonnage. It kind of depends upon what you're talking about, carriers versus oilers, versus all that kind of thing. So that's one of those gross data points, or gross numbers. You got to kind of tease down as to what it really means. But tonnage is interesting, mass is interesting, disruption is really interesting. Does that make any sense? No. No, okay, no. So if you have mass, so again, it goes back to your thing about Spanish Armada and the British fleet. The Brits outmaneuvered the Spanish. So they did not have as many ships, and they were not quite the fleet that the Armada was. But because of the maneuvering, and frankly, Lord Nelson's command that every captain exercised to his own best ability fighting the ships. So what they did is that they planned ahead of time for this kind of concert, this orchestra, this symphony, whatever, of a battle group. And then he gave to the individual captains, knowing what the objective was, their ability to fight their ship. Different techniques and different tactics so I would say now, bring that to the 21st century. How are we making the decisions? How are we understanding the soft areas? Because it's kind of like baseball. The bases are loaded. That's a chance for the offense to put you out, and defense to score. Which is it? Depends upon how you play it. So mass is interesting. It's formidable. It's important because they have reserves. But the more you have that, the more you are going to also be stretched out. So there are different ways to look at it. So turning it upside down is part of what we are trying to do. How do you change the calculus? Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, sir.
So our son graduated from Naval Academy in 2008 and post-Navy
Did we beat
school.
Army then? Did we beat Army in 2008?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's right.
In fact, the 4 years he was there, they never lost a game to either Army or Air Force.
Yeah.
And he also graduated post-Navy grad in 16 in computer science.
Smart guy. Oh, in computer science. Those guys are doing some great
Yeah.
work.
He's currently about to become commander down in San Diego. And when we spoke to him and told him we were coming to listen to you, he suggested 2 topics to discuss.
Oh, no.
The future
Oh,
of artificial intelligence
Yeah.
and unmanned aircrafts.
Yeah. So I have a nephew who went from being a pilot of the P-3 to now being a pilot in the unmanned system. So AI, artificial intelligence, ML, machine learning, and the human interface. You can't talk about one without all three. It's kind of a triad of effectiveness. So AI is as good as what's entered in, right? So you have that issue. So AI is good until it's not. And so you got to be able to understand that, but it's really fantastic stuff. But then how does AI inform the machine learning that then can do things in place of the human being? And that gets into unmanned systems. But the human interface is someplace. So my nephew, he's a pilot in the Triton system, big unmanned intelligent system. But he is making the final decisions about these things. So in my mind, it gets back to decision advantage. We're working with Microsoft and Zero Hours, to tell you the truth, to figure out how to bring those things together. Your son's work is really important, but I want to be guaranteeing you that he's going to be doing experimentation constantly and exercises constantly to figure out the best answer. But those three are all married. He is in the middle of it. He's going to discover some things we don't know, because the Navy does that. They use these platforms for exercises and labs. So he's going to be doing some work, but they are inextricably combined. But you do not talk about one without the other. Does that make any sense?
He certainly does not discuss what he's doing with us. We have no clue.
Yeah. He's in a great place. Went to Naval Academy. They won every year, right? He went to Naval Postgraduate School. He is operational. He's in command. That means that he has excelled, and your son is doing great things as a leader for our Navy, so thank you for that. This side.
Hi. You, as an educator or someone responsible for military education, you talk about good decisions,
Yeah.
informed people. It brings sort of bringing it all together, and it brings together an incident a couple of years back. It's not fresh. The John McCain, the SS
Yeah.
John McCain, had, and a couple other military ships had this series of mysterious accidents
Right.
where they plowed into other vessels in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And I was dumbfounded that the blame was laid to, you know, the sleepy dope on the conning tower at night, kind of. I mean, and it was sort of an unbelievable, somebody on staff didn't make the right decision in bad weather at the right time. And it just seemed like there should be more going on technologically.
Yeah.
More sophisticated, that SS John McCain shouldn't be plowing into things in the
Yeah,
Pacific.
so actually, McCain and Fitzgerald were huge issues for the Navy. First of all, we lost life. And so that's number one.
Right? It wasn't a fender bender.
No, it was a pretty bad thing. But what I need you to be assured about is that there was a lot of work done, to study it, to understand it. So one of the things that we do is we do sleep science. And there was a clear indication that that the guys and gals on the ship were not getting enough sleep. It was a real thing. And so that will imply judgment. There was also a view that the some of the officers on the ship did not get quite the right training. The Navy had decided to get economical about training, and we went back to some, huh?
Paid a big price then.
Yeah, we paid a big price
to-
for it. Yeah. No, I got it. And so they changed a lot of things in training, education. They've changed sleep patterns. They've also changed the lighting in the ships because of sleep patterns. So, blues, reds, they all have things that go with that. Reds and blues, and they tell you don't read this before going to bed because your brain does things with the lighting on these things. So we did lighting, a lot of things wrong, some other issues, but it was almost all human, and not
technological,
not-
clever
not so-
warfare and
there-
cloaking of other.
Yeah, there was some things that was
Okay.
almost all human.
I got a niece on a carrier in the Pacific, and I hope we're on our toes.
Well, thank you very much for having a niece on the aircraft carrier. What is she doing?
She actually is a doctorate. She's a counselor, because for 5,000 men and women on
Yeah,
a ship,
yeah.
some of them need,
Yeah.
they're not all,
And
they're all
there is a
fully
different-
mature
yeah.
adults, and part of it's coping with the world. That's a military environment.
So here's a really interesting thing. Thank you. So this is really interesting. So the Top Gun, who's been on a carrier as a pilot? Anybody? Okay, of course, Jay. So it used to be that you went to sea in the Navy. You went to sea and you were gone for 6 months, 9 months, and especially those who were down in submarines, or at times during Vietnam, 11 or 12 months, okay? There was no way to communicate with your family except by letter and the occasional phone call when you were ashore. Now, hey, husband or wife, I can't pay the bill. Or your son just got arrested, and you're now going into the cockpit when you heard that from your family. So your personal life becomes very intimate to you in an operational environment. So we've got to look at what happens, what is going on in the life of those folks as they start to then go into the engine room, or go into the weapons room, or go into the cockpit. So life for the actual operator is coming much closer than it ever did in the past. Now, this goes back to a time when we first began this kind of stuff. I remember it well, about 12 years ago, 14 years, no, more than that, about 15 years ago, a woman had her baby on a big screen in front of an aircraft carrier because she wanted to show her husband what it was like to do that. We don't do that anymore, but that was kind of funny. But yeah, so life has come very close to folks who are going into dangerous places. So it's good that they have the counselor, so good on your niece. Yes, sir.
Since the development of nuclear weapons, warfare has changed.
Yeah.
And we have limited wars, but even Putin isn't using
Yep.
nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So war has changed. And I wanted to ask you what you see in the future as the nature of warfare.
Yeah, what a great
That
question.
how is this combat going to go about? Because everybody knows that if you use nuclear weapons, that's mutually assured destruction, and it destroys the environment, and, it's against everybody. So in the future, how do we combat and compete, if you will, with our adversaries in a meaningful way that we can win, or at least get some advantages and so on?
So a couple of things. First of all, it is a question being asked all over the country. So it's a good question. I don't have an exquisitely perfect answer for you. However, you go back to back to the Chinese warrior named Sun Tzu. You go to the Spartans. You go to anybody who has a formidable warrior culture, and they're all going to tell you the objective of war is to completely demolish the will of the enemy, or of the other side. So what can you do to do that? Nowadays, you don't have to have a lot of weapons that go bang. You can do things to the electrical grid. You can do things to communications. And truth versus false in the social media context is a weapon. So the false narratives, the phony narratives, the lies that go out are part of national will. So there's a lot of discussion about what you do about this, because you don't have to fire a shot and you can win in some cases. Ukraine is a really interesting study in this, though. Putin has even threatened tactical nuclear weapons in various places, but that does not seem to be deterring the national will of Ukrainians. Now, they've got their own problems in Ukraine, but you can take down a country probably and not be too far off and not having to fire a shot, depending upon what you're doing. So what has Putin done with Ukrainians? He's taken up all these citizens, giving them and taking away their Ukrainian passports and giving them Russian passports, and saying the narrative is, I'm saving Russians. So the narrative is really important as to how you can undermine national will, and that can be done through phony pictures, phony voices, phony news, and what is in reality, what is in front of you, is it real or not? That's why learning and knowing and education are really important, if that makes any sense. I don't have an exquisite answer for you. You need to have weapons that go bang. You need to be able to do that. But there's more ways to undermine national will than just hard weapons, if that makes any sense. So I don't have an exquisite answer for you, but it's all over. It's a huge question. What is war in the future? And it is, I will tell you, it's a war of robotics, of men and women who in less than 50 years are willing to put chips in their brains to do certain things. It's either good and bad. It's a war that we have never seen before. You see in science fiction, kind of, sort of, but if you can imagine it, it can be created. So you can imagine this, and so our job is to be able to counter it and make it work for good, and that's what we have to do. That's our moral obligation, is to make it work for good. So, okay.
Hi, Madam Admiral. Thank you. You're an inspiration.
Sure.
I was going to ask you who was the Gene Hackman's character in Crimson Tide, but then I said, nah, that's not good.
It's okay. You can ask that on the side.
But seriously, with global trade, we have so many instances where you have Kaspersky, Pegasus, TikTok, making incursions into our systems, and especially with Kaspersky, who was part of an Army contractor. How do we guard against that type of thing? Legislation, restrictions, et cetera? I mean,
it's a great question. If you're a legislator, there's a lot of people out there who will break the law. I mean, it's a great question. I don't know that we have a handle on it. I will say it really is an issue. And think about, though, bigger than that, manufacturing. Almost all green energy technology is manufactured. It's created elsewhere. It's created in America. It's created in Europe. It's manufactured in China. So almost all green energy, so solar panels, wind systems are all. So the manufacturing issue is as important as the social systems you're talking about. It's daunting. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but it is something to be watching for. There's a movement to bring manufacturing back to other places. That will work in some places, not in others, in some cases, not in others. But the manufacturing is as important as the TikToks of the world. But TikTok is overtaking. There's an interesting diagram that I think Wired did. I think Wired did it on Yahoo versus TikTok and the evolution. I don't know if you've seen it. It's daunting. Yahoo almost completely disappears off the graph, and TikTok and Amazon and Google are up there on high. So I don't have an answer. Laws are interesting, but what are you trying to legislate? Are you trying to legislate lack of movement of information? That's anti-American and anti-constitutional for us. Are you trying to legislate against the bad guy? Well, what is that bad guy? Now define the bad guy. So it really is it's lots of gray matter, lots of grayness to it. So, okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
From a naval perspective,
Is it raining? This is so cool. I don't have any rain in California, so I'm loving the smell. Okay, go ahead.
my question, from a naval perspective, have we had any lessons learned from the Russian-Ukraine war?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot. I can't talk about it, but there's a lot being learned.
Are there any
Well,
you can talk about?
Yeah, well, no, and I did, the narrative is really interesting. Zelensky took hold of that narrative from the very first day. And then Putin made the narrative even more resounding for Ukrainians. And I think the other lesson is surprise. Who would have thought? And so how do you predict behavior and actions? There's a lot being learned in cyber, a lot being learned in cyber, a lot being learned in that whole world. But yeah, there's a lot being learned. That's what I'd say to you.
After these, that's it.
Okay, sir.
Hi. Thank you very much for all the effort you went to get here and for all
Sure.
of your service in general. I'm a retired business school
Yeah.
professor, and
Thank you for that.
one of my greatest assignments was in 1980. I was a visiting professor at West Point,
Yep.
the first year to graduate
Yep.
women in their class. And since then, I've done work with the Army on its leadership development and at the War College. And I've also had some experience with IBM, so I'm interested in
Wow, yeah.
a lot of the organizations you've been with. And as an American, I really appreciate the role the military played in 2020, 21
Yeah.
in ensuring a transition that was safe
Yep.
and effective.
Yep.
And so when you talk about what the military has to learn in terms of technology or whatever, I'm very optimistic about that. I'm
Yeah.
not worried
Yep.
about that.
Yep.
I have great confidence in the U.S. military. I worry much more about U.S. business.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned about what will it take for a lot of these ideas, the values, the learning ability, the sense of purpose, the values,
Yeah.
to really become part of American business again. I remember on IBM and their 3 values, that drove their business, and no more at IBM.
Yeah, we can talk about it maybe on the side. It's a heavy question. Why don't we kind of talk about it, because I think that there's some interesting things in there. So would you mind if maybe we hung out here?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
This is a quick inquiry that can be answered by yes or no. Going back to the days of Lyndon Johnson and the Bay of Tonkin. Can you talk closer? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
going back to the days of Lyndon Johnson and the Bay of Tonkin, if that were to occur today, would we be able to have more information to have him made a more informed decision?
Yeah, so yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Yes, if that's what you want for an answer. But it's also understanding what you're also seeing, so that's the other part of it too, but yes.
All right, thank you for your service. Israel has a 2-year military commitment for those who are 18 years of age.
Who? Oh, Israel,
Israel.
Yeah.
What do you think of that program? Do you think it would work in America? And if so, what would be the benefits to us as a society if we had a commitment like that?
Yeah, I don't think everybody's fit for the military. It's not going to be a good fit. I do think public service would be terrific. I worry about the notion of what a citizen is, about citizenship. I do worry about that, to tell you the truth. And so public service allows you to see the country in some fashion. So I was talking to somebody who was in the Peace Corps and working out of Michigan, I think it was, no, out of Wisconsin. And she couldn't go over to overseas. But think about the fact that if you had 2 years of public service, were you doing something for others? I think that's a profound thing. And so not everybody could be in the military for lots of reasons. But I want Americans to feel as though they know their country. And I think that public service helps to do that. So, yes, sir. Yeah, so that's where I am. I'm not into military, but I am into public service. Okay? Yes, sir. Okay. Sir? Can you come up to the microphone? It'd be easier. Okay. Okay.
A gentleman just came up to the Chautauqua Women's Club desk up back there and said that in one of the gardens here, a tree had been planted for Professor Hickman.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'd love
that
to see
there's
it.
somewhere, but they didn't know where it was.
Oh, man.
So, I mean.
Maybe I'll go walk around on the grounds. Does it have a plate on it? The bird tree in the garden club. Oh, okay. I'll do that. Yes, sir.
What is your position on drafting the draft for women?
So it's a great question. I believe that it's a harder question. And I have to tell you retrospectively where I am. I've seen women do some extraordinary things in all services. And if we go to the question about public service, I think I am much more inclined toward drafting than I used to be. However, I don't think we're ever going to be there, to tell you the truth. If we are a strong nation and we believe in what we're doing, I think that people will come up to the call. In 9/11, after 9/11, it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary who was coming up. And I also think that there's other ways. Again, I've changed my mind a little bit on it because I've seen it. So I guess I'm okay with it now. But drafting 2 people who are parents of the same family, I wouldn't do that. So you gotta so let's do other things offline. Okay, thank you very, very, very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and stay dry.